Greetings. It is Friday, February the 27th. There's only 2 days left in February. We've made it almost through 2 months. All right. And we are now in the 18th chapter of Acts. Here we go. After this, he left from Athens and went to Corinth, where he found a Jewish man named Aquila, a native of Pontus, and who had recently come from Italy with his wife Priscilla, because Claudius had ordered all the Jews to leave Rome. Paul came to them, and being in the same occupation, stayed with them and worked, for they were tent makers by trade. He reasoned in the synagogue every Sabbath and tried to persuade both Jews and Greeks. When Silas and Timothy came down from Macedonia, Paul was occupied with preaching the message and solemnly testified to the Jews that the Messiah is Jesus. But when they resisted and blasphemed, he shook out his clothes and told them, "Your blood is on your own hands. I am clean. From now on, I will go to the Gentiles." So he left there and went to the house of a man named Titus Justus, a worshiper of God, whose house was next door to the synagogue. Crispus, the leader of the synagogue, believed the Lord along with his whole household. And many of the Corinthians, when they heard, believed and were baptized. Then the Lord said to Paul in a vision, "Do not be afraid, but keep on speaking and don't be silent. For I am with you, and no one will lay a hand on you to hurt you, because I have many people in the city." And he stayed there 1 year and 6 months, teaching the word of God among them. When Gallio was proconsul of Achaia, the Jews made a united attack against Paul and brought him to the judge's bench. "This man," they said, "persuades people to worship God contrary to the law." And Paul was about to open his mouth. Gallio said to the Jews, "If it were a matter of crime or moral evil, it would be reasonable for me to put up with you Jews. But if these are questions about words, names, and your own law, see to it yourself. I don't want to be the judge of such things." So he drove them from the judge's bench. Then they all seized Sosthenes, the leader of the synagogue, and beat him in front of the judge's bench. But none of these things concerned Gallio. So Paul, having stayed on for many days, said goodbye to the brothers and sailed away to Syria. Priscilla and Aquila were there with him. He shaved his head at Cenchrea, because he had taken a vow. When they reached Ephesus, he left them there. But he himself entered the synagogue and engaged discussion with the Jews. And though they had asked him to stay for a longer time, he declined, but said goodbye and said, "I'll come back to you again if God wills." Then he set sail for Ephesus. On landing at Caesarea, he went up and greeted the church and went down to Antioch. And after spending time there, he set out, traveling through one place after another in the Galatian territory and Phrygia, strengthening all the disciples. A Jew named Apollos, a native Alexandrian, an eloquent man who was powerful in the scriptures, arrived in Ephesus. This man had been instructed in the way of the Lord, and being fervent in spirit, he spoke and taught the things about Jesus accurately, although he knew only John's baptism. He began to speak boldly in the synagogue. After Priscilla and Aquila heard him, they took him home and explained the way God to him more accurately. When he wanted to cross over to Achaia, the brothers wrote to the disciples, urging them to welcome him. After he arrived, he greatly helped those who had believed through grace. For his vigorous refuted the Jews in public. For he vigorously refuted the Jews in public, demonstrating through the scriptures that Jesus is the Messiah. All right, friends, chapter 18, and this week is gone. We will see you in March. God bless.